Welcome to Lights Camera Thrills, your backstage pass to the world of creativity, storytelling, and cinematic magic. In this episode, we are honored to have a conversation with the brilliant filmmaker Kevin Kodama. Kevin takes us on a journey through his creative process, sharing how his personal experiences, cultural heritage, and the passion for storytelling has shaped his career. From exploring the challenges of bringing a vision to life on screen to the intricacies of creating suspenseful and emotionally powerful narratives. Kevin gives us a glimpse into the mind of a filmmaker. We also discuss the importance of collaboration in filmmaking and the lessons he has learned along the way. So sit back, relax, and join us as we uncover the stories behind the storyteller, Kevin Kodama.
I like started in community college. Um, Originally, I was thinking of doing like sociology, but I took this global cinemas class with Professor Wingbrooks. Shout out Professor Wingbrooks. And it kind of like opened my mind to cinema. Like the first day, she basically put on this movie and was like, take notes about what you see, blah blah blah. And I was like, ooh, this is where I want to be. And kind of just like immediately took to it. Like a few classmates and I like made a short film together that semester, and just like had developed this habit of like trying to make films and meet people, and then eventually went to SF State, San Francisco State, and yeah, I like took classes there, met more people, kind of developed skills, and then yeah, I've just been working freelance in the industry now, and like been trying to keep up with like writing features and shorts, and like yeah, so that's kind of been my journey. Just it's really been short. It's like maybe 4 or 5 years. I've been kind of doing this, so still pretty fresh and new, and learning, and yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my
Uh,
filmmaking journey, I guess.
do you feel in any way your childhood has shaped the way of filmmaking you do or how you got into filmmaking in any way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to, as a kid, I used to be very like animated or very passionate about playing, I guess. I used to do this thing that my parents called like playing with my hands, like basically using my hands as like imaginary models, and then like in my mind I'm like building a story in a world, and it would be these kind of creations would be most fruitful after watching films. So definitely a lot of that. And then me and my sister would do like little mini theater productions with our stuffed animals, like in the living room and stuff. So there was always like this thing of creativity, and pretty early on, like had discovered or realized or whatever that like I was really good at writing. Like in third grade, I think, or something. Like wrote this poem, and everyone was like, "Whoa, this is so good." And so have just been kind of consistently falling back to writing at like different points in my life. And so when I turned 18, just kind of like focused on that as like a career thing. And yeah. So yes, short answer, yes.
So your family wasn't surprised that you got into filmmaking in that case.
No, I don't think so. I feel like it was always in the wheelhouse. I mean, yeah, I feel like any decision I make, they're not going to be surprised with, because I'm pretty off the rails, like just in general. Just in general, like yeah. Um, I wouldn't consider what my life choices to be orthodox. So yeah,
What do
I've
you
already
mean?
created that. I just like um yeah, I guess like immediately after high school, I went to college for a little bit, but then like I left pretty quickly, and so like by the time from the time I was like 18, I've been kind of living on my own and working. And I was working in the cannabis industry, and my parents aren't like, too jiving with that kind of stuff. And uh, yeah, so I feel like my life choices are always confronting their expectations, I guess, in a way. And so by the time I got to like filmmaking and like deciding on that, it was like, oh yeah, do what you want. Like, don't be kind of crazy and like choose whatever. I guess, yeah.
So do we see that rebelliousness in your films as well?
I would like to think, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm always balancing between like my rebelliousness and my strict need for like structure and like form, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
In a way, yeah.
also, as we are talking about like your experience since childhood and you getting into filmmaking,
hmm
has your Japanese heritage also played some part?
Yeah, that was an interesting question that I like mulled over a little bit. Generally no, because like I don't have that like close of a relationship with my Japanese heritage. Just because like I'm fifth generation Japanese American, so like a lot of that stuff has just been kind of like syringed out of us. Um, but in that case, though, like it does kind of affect my filmmaking, especially the thesis and stuff, because it like my Japanese heritage feels like a ghost like presence in my identity experience or whatever. And so there's definitely some subconscious like trying to search and look and find and definitely in the work like that kind of stuff comes up.
Right. And your
Yeah.
thesis film, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like it's kind of like related to the thesis film because the film, like the log line, is like a fantasy romance set in a Japanese internment camp, or in the ruins of a Japanese internment camp, where two young women reconcile their relationship as ghosts. So there is this like theme of reconciliation and like looking backwards and confronting history and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like it relates to how I see my Japanese heritage. Yeah,
Maybe it's like kind of your way to find a connection.
exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
it would. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
What was the reaction to it? Your family's reaction, your friends, the community. What was their reaction?
Yeah. I mean I mean everyone embraced it. It did really well. Like people really like enjoyed it. I get like and liked it or whatever, and it did well. Like did went to some festivals and stuff, and yeah, I guess like the Japanese American community specifically really like responded to it in a way, and so yeah, I feel like it did well in the space. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends work on it and stuff, so it was definitely like really awesome to share that with everyone. Yeah. Cuz everyone did an amazing job. Like yeah, just like from the camera to the editing and the acting and everything. Just it was so involved and yeah.
Right. But as you said, that you were, not the orthodox kind. The film is kind of something that is little going towards something that you probably no one was expecting you would work on. Because,
Sure, yeah.
yeah. So, what do you think about that? Like,
Um
people must be surprised that, you did that project.
Yeah, I mean, I surprised myself in a lot of ways. Like, I just didn't. I mean, I don't know. I feel like from when I was pretty young, I was always out to like try to prove myself in some sort of way. So I feel like this short film was like a first thing that kind of I was able to prove to myself, I guess. And then just like every step of the process, I was like, really? Like, this is happening? Like, I can't believe it's just working like this. Because I don't know. I guess I'm just not used to like good things lining up like that. Um, but it was a good experience, and yeah, it's just awesome. You know, one of those great opportunities to like work on a cool or just like a interesting topic that means something with like people that you care about and like working with and stuff. And so yeah, it was great. I don't know if that answered the question.
I think it does.
Sure.
Talking about your work experience, you
Uh-huh.
have direct films, you write them, you also produce them. But
Yeah.
you told me you particularly don't enjoy the producing part. And
Right.
so, can you tell us what the process is like and why do you dislike it so much?
Yeah, so right, I wrote notes on this because I truly want to like clarify what I meant by that. Because I kind of said it in jest, like tongue in cheek. Like I okay, yeah. So in summary, I kind of feel like there should be a need to decentralize the role of the director, and particularly auteur theory. Like I feel like that is a sham. And we've kind of, as an industry, given a lot of like power to the director in terms of like what they're allowed to do or what their say is. And I feel like in certain cases, like very specific cases, like yeah, tour theory applies, but I don't think it's like a catch-all thing for every single like project out there. You know what I mean? And so I feel like when it comes to this idea of auteurism or like a writer director or whatever like indie cinema term they use for like this kind of dictatorial filmmaker, I feel like directing in that terms is actually producing. You know what I mean? Like just having control over the whole process and stuff like that. Like you're essentially doing the producer's job. You're not like directing is only working with the actors. I feel like traditionally in Hollywood. Like it's not really all this other stuff that like, you end up doing in your director like the directing thesis class or whatever. So I feel like it's just like a slight redefinition or whatever, very like film studies like kind of nonsense, but I
Now, I
just yeah.
understand the point you're making, but for the audience who are
Yeah.
very new to the films, can you talk a little bit about the auteur theory?
Sure, yeah. Just because like so in French New Wave is this like 70s film movement, and they were very heavy on like film studies and like theory, and they kind of developed this idea of auteur theory because before in Hollywood and just in filmmaking in general, like the director was a hired hand and wasn't like in charge of the filmmaking. The producer like was the billing name on the film. And so they kind of said, well, if you look at Howard Hawks or Alfred Hitchcock or Orson Welles, like you can see that they have control over the film and like the language that they're using and stuff like that. So they created the auteur theory, which is essentially like the author theory, and they're claiming that directors are the ultimate like author of the film. And so there's like critiques on that because it's like the auteur theory is like centralizing the role of like the filmmaker, and it creates the dictator, right? Like it creates this uniform leader at the top, like in terms of like the filmmaking hierarchy, and a lot of people do like claim or a lot of people feel like the filmmaking process is a collaborative effort and that like everyone's involved and that there's multiple leaders and that there's multiple hands, that the auteur theory is pretty pretentious and like gives a lot of power and agency to like one person, usually like a man, and so I feel like in an effort to get away from that, like I made a couple shorts within the last year where I just like kind of tried to experiment with filmmaking process and tried to delineate like who has control at what time, and made stuff without a script, or made stuff where like I wasn't a director or whatever, but like I feel like it's just BS. But yeah,
Um,
that's just my explanation about tour theory.
yeah, I do understand what you mean. Like everyone is
Yeah.
in some way collaborating on a set, and
Hmm. Hmm.
no one person should have the authority because it's end of the day. Everyone works inspires more different content, I guess.
Right.
How do you incorporate that on a set when you are
Right.
working with other filmmakers?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm still learning that process and trying to develop that process as well. And like learning a lot from other filmmakers from the past, and like just working on sets as well. For me and like what I've done in the past, in terms of actors, like working with actors, I like to have them very involved. We have rehearsals a lot often, and I like to think, I mean, I don't know. I try to get actors to be involved in the writing process, like if I have the time and like the capability to do that. Like I want them to edit and like feel like they can contribute to their characters or the story or whatever. And so like on my thesis, they're credited as writers because I felt like we were collaborating on the writing a lot of the times. Like we created a few drafts together, like and so I try to, in some ways, like allow that process to happen in every department. Like, I don't know, yeah, like costume fittings, or just like a lot of meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah, keeping everyone on the same page, and
Yeah,
also like involving everyone in the vision that you have for the film,
right.
right?
And like allowing mistakes to happen early. I had this written down somewhere. Like I just like this idea of like you know, making decisions earlier in the process so that like by the time you're getting to the execution of it, you're not having to like think about all that extra stuff. You can just like make it better.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think when you're, in very initial in your career and you have just started making the film, there's this anxiety that you have where
Mm-hmm.
you're keeping important things for the end. You're
Right.
scared to make that final decision, right? That I want
Right.
this angle, this camera angle, this costume, or these dialogues, right?
Sure.
So in that case, what you are trying to say here is like for young new filmmakers, like make the decisions early on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's more helpful. Like I've just seen so many sets where like, you know, the they're figuring out the shot like on the day, and like I get where that's like normal, and certain processes that is like the part of the process, like documentary, like that you just have to do that. But I feel like when you're working on narrative, you should just be the most prepared, like in every sense. um like even if you abandon the plan like altogether, like on the day that you shoot, at least you thought of it ahead of time, and that the ideas that you're making on set aren't your first ideas, because I feel like you should just be able to make yeah, just like make mistakes earlier in the process, so that when you are making the decisions that get pasted onto film, like you are at your fifth mistake or sixth mistake, and that it's being refined, and I don't know. I feel like it's better to have preparation, and also it saves money, right? Like you don't have to like figure it out with 10 takes or 20 takes or whatever. Like a lot of people don't have the money to do 100 takes like Kubrick or whatever. Like you have to be quick and think on your toes. So I feel like it's better to just have some sort of idea beforehand, you know? Like as much as you can, as you possibly can. Like obviously things aren't always going to work out in your favor, but if you can get the muscle memory in, you know, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think I have seen a lot of people very early on where it's like first few films that they make.
Mm,
I've seen they always have like we'll have a reshoot, but sometimes
mm,
the budget, the time, people it doesn't allow. As you grow in your career, either the actors won't be available, so it's better
yeah.
to initially have everything ready so that that situation doesn't arise.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I forget, I think it was in Boy Scouts, someone said proper preparation prevents poor performance. And yeah, obviously stuck with me. I feel like that's just a good tenet to
Yeah.
use. Yeah.
Well, I have seen most of your films, and I'm very
Nice.
curious to know who inspired you to make all those things. Who are the filmmakers who inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like uh Noah Baumbach, number one, uh rewatches movies the most. And then like after that, it's just like a bunch of people, like depends on the month. Um Jean-Luc Godard is there. Linklater, I feel like, is up there. Richard Linklater. Stanley Kubrick, Celine Sciamma, Kelly Reichardt. Um, yeah, I'll just throw those names out.
Any way their film style that you feel like is reflected in your work as well in any way?
Um, yeah. I mean, I try to like emulate, I guess, what they do. Um, yeah. I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
tough
Okay.
question. Yeah,
Let's talk about Noah first. Noah
sure.
Baumbach. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think from what I understood, he's number one on your list, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So which one of his film do you like the most and why?
Yeah. Francis Ha, my favorite film of all time. Why? Um because when I first saw it, it was like I guess one of the first moments in my adult life where I felt like I saw myself on screen. Just in the experience that she goes through and the way she carries herself through her life, I guess. And I have subsequently rewatched the movie like over 20 to 30 times since then. So it's like an infinite well for me creatively and just like as a person. Especially like going through that time period where she's at in the movie, like age wise, like where I'm at now. So there's a lot of like reflection and like thinking about like that kind of stuff. Uh, yeah, that's my favorite movie. But you know, Meyerowitz Project or Meyerowitz Stories. Also love Marriage Story, Kicking and Screaming. Yeah, those are my favorites.
Yeah, there is something unique about his filmmaking. Like he takes you into the very like reality of things. You feel like you are there, even though
Yeah,
the situation is like a very, I would say, like a regular situation where you would feel like, oh, I could have been there
right.
in that because I watched his film Marriage Story and that felt like okay, I was in the room
Right.
making the decisions with the characters and it felt really heavy. That
Yeah.
is the kind of filmmaking he does.
Yeah. Yeah, he has like a nice mixture of different things going on like at the same time. And I feel like as he grows as a filmmaker, it becomes more balanced and nuanced and definitely his later films I relate to a lot more, especially after like he works starts working with Greta Gerwig. I just feel like the films get this extra like sauce. And yeah, I just like always find myself seeing like me and my life situations in his movies. Like Meyerowitz stories reminds me of like my dad and his family and just like the men and how they like interact with each other and stuff. And like Kicking and Screaming reminds me of me and like my high school friends or like college friends. Just like the banter and like the quick witted things and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree in that like his stuff is just so real, but then also like just played up and like funny and like just silly, you know? Like I want that balance too. Like I guess if I'm trying to like find something in my films is like I want that level of like drama with like comedy in a way that is relatable and yeah.
Yeah. So, talking about your films in that case, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, what are your top favorite, top three, maybe?
Yeah, funny question. Yeah, I feel like I I, like obviously Chicago Ganai have I like obviously have to like that.
Yeah.
Um
What does that mean? Because it's in Japanese, right? What does that
sure.
title
Y-
mean?
Yeah, that I mean that's like a whole thing too. That's like a Japanese saying that they used in the internment camps. And it basically is like it is what it is or like c'est la vie. Like it cannot like the literal translation is it cannot be helped or something like that. And it basically is just like we have to accept like our life conditions and just persevere, you know. And I feel like I had a different title at the beginning of the filmmaking process, but after like writing certain drafts and like getting to a certain point, I think it was in the edit actually. I was like, I want to change the title. And I just felt like this as a theme like related to the characters more in terms of like the decisions that they made in their past lives and like the the kind of like confrontation that they're going through now is like each character feels like I had to do what I had to do, which is like I think a line from one of the characters,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
that yeah is just so important. I feel like, especially in terms of like survival and like staying true to your principles and your beliefs and stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. But I was like, when I watched your film,
Yeah,
as uninformed as I am, I
sure,
came from India to US, and it was like my third year in California,
sure,
and in those 3 years, no one even mentioned about the Japanese concentration camp or whatever
sure,
happened in America and all the dark
right,
history that we have.
right,
Unfortunately, no one ever told me about it.
it's
And as
crazy,
an international person, I feel like a lot of people won't know about what you are talking about.
right.
And through your film, I got the chance, but I also want the people who are watching to know what you're talking about. Could you tell a little bit about that as well?
Sure, yeah. Um yeah, it's
I think
so
it's a lot, but
it's a
you
lot.
can.
No, I'm trying to like figure out how to preface it and stuff. Basically, like World War II created this like really weird relationship between the United States and Japan, like politically. And so like when Japan's like kind of doing what they're doing, at a certain point they attack Pearl Harbor, which is like Hawaii and technically the United States. And so that prompts America to like go into war with them. And so as like political like hostaging, they pull all the Japanese Americans on the West Coast and like put them into concentration camps basically. And like as a way to like bargain with Japan. And most of these people like have lived in America for like generations, like multiple generations, right? And so yeah, this time period of the 40s was like really weird for Japanese Americans, like a lot of discrimination, and then like the camp experience, which I think was like around 3 to 5 years, depending on like how long you stayed in the thing. And so yeah, like I guess it's definitely a big topic in the Japanese American community because it pretty much defines like our whole experience in terms of like post-war America. You know what I mean? Like you don't have big influxes of like Japanese immigrants after that, and like a lot of people like assimilate into American culture and stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of just like rambling now, but yeah, it's like a pretty big thing in the West Coast, particularly because it was like a war zone or
Yeah.
like potential war zone or whatever.
And how is your film tied into this? So now that people have reference, um, now the
So
title
yeah,
makes
the
sense.
film is like shot in on site of an actual like internment camp. That's what they called it or whatever. And so it's like a historical site, like an archaeological historical site. And it's run by like the national park system and stuff like that. And so the characters are like ghosts from the camp, but also, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna say that. They're ghosts from the camp, and they're like coming back to the camp and trying to reconcile like their broken relationship. And there's like a lot of in sort of like intricate details that are related to this experience, particularly the questionnaire which the American government like distributed to Japanese Americans in the camp. And part of this questionnaire like asked these people to basically denounce their loyalty to the Japanese king like government or emperor or whatever, and to acknowledge their loyalty to America. And eventually people like fought in Europe for America, and like all this stuff. Like it's like it was a pretty big thing and divided a lot of families. People, so basically if you said no to those questions, you were put into another camp, like a special camp, and a lot of these people were like expatriated back to Japan. So yeah, it's just like this whole thing that kind of defined that experience and divided people, like was a big conflict, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there is a huge like division between like assimilating into America and then honoring and owning your heritage and like those traditions and stuff. And I think in America, in general, they want people to assimilate, right? Like wear Western clothing and blah, blah, and speak the language and work their jobs and stuff like that, and
Right.
climb the social ladder, you know. So I feel like, yeah, I'm kind of running away, but I feel like in terms of defining this period of Japanese American history, like that questionnaire, I feel like was one of the biggest dividing lines within the camp experience. Yeah.
Right. Talking about again, going back to the same film,
Uh huh.
in the entire film, one image was like imprinted in my head was the mountains.
Sure.
They are
Yeah.
constantly there, and I think you used a very different kind of lens also to capture how the vast, the terrain was
Yeah.
uh, around the concentration camps or the intermittent camps, as they call it. Was there any particular reason to show them? I remember we had a chat about it back then.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we shot on anamorphic lenses, and we decided the DP and I, Alex Long, and decide like we wanted to shoot on anamorphic because to like allude to the Western genre, and create like this, really big landscape image. I felt like it was important to do that because when you go to this camp in particular, I'm speaking about Manzanar, California, a little bit north of like Bakersfield, on the like Eastern Sierras. When you go there, you're like literally in the middle of nowhere, and you're on either side of you are mountain ranges, the Sierra Nevadas, and then some other mountain range, not as famous. And it's pretty haunting to consider you were in a prison inside a prison. You know what I mean? Like, even if you escaped from this place, there was nowhere to go. Like, you're in a valley, you're in a desert in a valley. So you're just like in the worst of conditions. And yeah, I felt like that feeling of being trapped was invoked by these like mountains, you that there was no like escape. You were kind of just there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The film essentially is about romance and drama and the
Yeah.
history, but till the end, I found this suspense that followed because as an audience, I wanted to know where are we going ahead with this. So, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you were able to achieve that? Because it's like, for all the thriller fans who are here to
Yeah.
understand, how did you achieve that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, um, yeah, I was trying to think of this. I kind of always just go back to like the principles of drama and the principles of like screenwriting or acting or whatever. I feel like those three things always speak the same language in terms of like building a story. For me, it's just like having really defined characters that are different, and they both like want and need things, and they both do things to try and get that. I feel like that's like the basic mechanisms. And then I feel like in terms of building suspense or building drama or whatever, that is, what they considered raising the stakes. Like you have to kind of, oops, ante it up, build up the next thing. And that was definitely, a phase in the writing process. Like, I think I got to a draft where like the tone and like the feeling was there, but like the dramatic arc was off. And I had professor, Myron Terechevan, who was like mentoring the process, and they kind of brought up this idea of like dramatic arc and like building suspense, and that you need to allude to some sort of conflict within each scene that like builds towards the end. And so that kind of directed this film in particular in terms of like reordering scenes so that like you feel like this thing is going to a direction, and then by the time you get to the end it like fulfills all your questions and like anticipations and stuff like that.
Right. I think
So
I'm
yeah.
not an expert on like romantic films,
Sure.
but considering like drama, each scene, as you said, with the characters, there's like this push and pull that you have to show that dramatizes the scene. But I think the reorganization in that kind of builds towards the suspense, right?
Right. Yeah, because originally I think like the first scene was the last scene, and then like the second scene was the third scene, or like the first scene. Like they were all in jumbled up, and then we like rewrote a like there was the whole new construction in terms of like achieving this idea of like building suspense and building drama, and Yeah, I feel like in any genre, like your those principles will always remain the same. You know what I mean? Like I feel like um you'll always just have characters that want something and are trying to get it, and then you kind of pit them against each other. Uh, whether that's like romance or drama or even comedy, I feel like you're always doing kind of the same, more or less the same thing. So yeah, those
Right.
are yeah my notes.
But that, like, in terms of, let's say we are talking about in terms of like the storyline.
Hmm.
If I come to dialogues, which is, I feel
Yeah,
like I always partner with someone to write the dialogues,
sure, yeah,
because I feel like I don't know how normal people talk. So
yeah,
I always feel that way. So
fair.
when I'm writing, especially thrillers,
Hmm.
you always have to be like very very specific with the words you use, because something will give
Sure,
it away,
right,
and you don't want that.
right.
uh, how would you say it's
Mm.
different when you are just making a drama or a romance versus when there is a
Mm.
suspense part involved?
Huh. Yeah.
Maybe let's start about how you write dialogues, like what's your process like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like I just it's kind of like I like what I typically do is like try to imagine these people and then like I'll talk to them if that makes any sense. Like I'll have conversations with them, like sometimes out loud, like most of the time in my head, trying to like figure out their voice and like what their mood and temperament is and stuff like that. And then like I I always try to figure out a situation where two people are like need to get things, and either they're working together to figure that out, or they're working against each other, or they're trying to get something from the other person. There's always some construction of like things need to happen, and that's always like the basis of the scene, and then we kind of just go from there and just let it play out, and like uh I just kind of like free flow, like vomit and then like edit as I go, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I think
uh
you built a really good tension in the film Sticky Fingers.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so people who haven't watched it, that film is shot in a room, but with the dialogues, you constantly feel the push and the pull with the how the audience or the characters are speaking,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you are with them. You can feel
Oh,
the
thanks.
constant. They want something together, then they are against each other, and you are constantly like trying to take sides.
Sure,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of understand what you mean, and it was nicely visible in the film.
Thank you. Yeah, and that one, funny enough, that one's like adapted from a theater play. So I mean, it had a lot of that like baked into it already. I mean, we did some editing to it, but like a lot of that drama and that push and pull is like written by the guy already. So
Yeah, which play was it adapted from again?
the original source is called "This Is Our Youth" by Kenneth Lonergan, who did Manchester by the Sea. So, and he's like very experienced in theater and drama and stuff. So, yeah, he's great.
How was the adaptation process for you? Like, what would you say, like, you adapted from it?
The spirit, like I feel like uh the voices of the characters and like the rambunctiousness, that was like kind of what I was trying to get at. And I adapted it with actors, and that was like really interesting too. In terms, because like we cut out a lot of stuff and then rewrote a lot of stuff, especially in within the monologues. Like the theater version is like very heavily theatery and like like performative and like extra. So we like pared down a lot of stuff, like took out a lot of extraneous whatever. And then I feel like rhythm was like one thing we've smoothed over, like make it more filmy and like more flowy. And yeah, I tried not to like watch the original play actually, but when we were making it, like I just wanted to read the thing and then kind of formulate my own thing. So yeah, definitely like the words, like staying true to what the page is doing, I guess. Let me drink water. It's
Yeah,
all good. That
Shikata
happens.
Ganai. In
Chicago
that,
Night.
yeah, in that the scenes were more emotionally charged, even
Sure.
for
Yeah.
actors. So in that situation, how do you give them direction? As you said, like you try to involve them, and you also gave them credit for being writers.
Mhm.
So, what do you mean by that? Like, how was the process like, and how did you handle that?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I basically casted like 3 or 4 months in advance. And we had like about 2-ish months of rehearsals. A lot of it in person, like rehearsals, but we were for about like a month we were writing. So we would like meet up. I would bring my laptop and we would go through the script, go through each scene, talk about it. Like they would give me notes and then like I would rewrite the scene and then we would like redo it and then rewrite it and then we it was just this endless process of like figuring it out. And then at a certain point we started rehearsing, which was also in person. And in that process there are less, I mean, no, I've like it's still all like very involved in terms of, I feel like when you're directing it becomes more about like what like the actions, like how you are moving in the space and stuff. So it got to a point where like I filmed a version on my phone, like I filmed scenes at the park with them, to get like an idea of like what it was going to look like and stuff. And yeah, I feel like any actor will like agree with this, that like I love rehearsals. Like I just get a kick out of this process. And I do it like a lot if I can. Like 2 to 3 hours twice a week up until the shoot. And it's like a very serious thing for me.
I
And
think actors also get the opportunity to get into the character and really embrace it.
exactly. That's where I was going. Like I feel like you just get more time to feel it, experiment, again, like make mistakes. And by the time, like I like doing that because by the time you get to the shoot day, you can kind of just like forfeit all of all of that stuff to the actor, and you don't have, there's not much else you can really go into like in terms of discovering or figuring things out. So I feel like through this process we're kind of agreeing on a lot of the decisions and like figuring out the drama and like the feeling of it. Like I always want to get like their input in terms of like how it feels to them, and like yeah, I don't know. I feel like the drama and the emotional chargedness, like that comes from the work that they put in, and like the stuff that they're doing with each other, with themselves, with the like words, the script and stuff. Yeah, that's kind of like my process, I guess, with actors. It's a lot of rehearsals and trust. A lot of like quid quo pro kind of stuff. Like you need to give them agency, and they need to like trust that you're gonna do right by them. Like they don't want to look dumb or whatever, and you're kind of like in charge of them or whatever. I don't
I
know.
think everyone is in, I would say confident in whatever they are doing, and rehearsals actually give that opportunity to the directors and also
Yeah,
know like what language works best for the actors as well.
sure.
Because
Yeah,
when the
definitely.
camera's on, the pressure's on for everyone because
Yeah.
time's running, money's running, right?
Yeah, and for me in particular too, like I like long takes, I like wide shots. So for me it is very theater like in terms of performance when you're doing a lot of this stuff. So I want to make sure that you have your lines memorized, that like, we're not going to experience any hiccups on the day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I just like rehearsals because it mitigates a lot of
Yeah.
on-set
Any
problems and stuff.
particular reason you prefer wide shots?
Any particular reason? Visuals, like visual language, I think is
Yeah.
important to like filmmaking, and I don't know. I feel like when watch a lot of films that impact me, I notice that it's like, oh, this is in one shot. Like they're not really cutting that much, and I like that. And I think cuts like annoy me, like kind of silly cuts, just like unnecessary editing. Like I feel like everything should matter. Like everything should kind of have a purpose and intention, and like feel impactful, I guess. So yeah, I just like things typically wider and or constructed, like different shots within one sequence. Yeah. It's just I feel like that's filmmaking style and technique, when you look at like the quote unquote greats, their filmic language is so like strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have approached the end of the podcast, so I'm
Nice.
going to ask you another question. If you have to
Great.
recommend any three films, thriller genre or not, what would be those three films and why?
Yeah. I have a list. I mean, I have a lot of films. I have like more than three. I'm like my three favorite films of all time are Francis Ha, Vivre sa vie, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I feel like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf kind of like fits into what we're kind of talking about here in terms of like building drama and suspense and like characters and stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I would also recommend like Tape by Richard Linklater and Shutter Island by Martin Scorsese. That's like my favorite Scorsese film, and when I think of a thriller, like that's kind of the film that I go to, and I just love the way that's written and stuff like that. And then like The Notebook, I'll recommend. The writing in that is really great. Like the scenes are really great. In terms of like characters want stuff and fighting and whatever. Like it's an amazing film. Yeah, so that's my list for people.
And the last question,
Uh-huh.
and the most important one.
Sure.
If someone is just starting out to make a film, what would your advice be?
Like they're about to make their first film, or
Yeah,
just like they want to get into filmmaking,
yeah,
or both.
both. Like it's
Yeah,
someone aspires to be a filmmaker and they are just hesitant to make their first film.
sure, yeah. I
About to make.
mean, I feel like it's very hard and very easy at the same time. Like I feel like it's easy in that like it's very simple, right? You just need to do the work and study the craft. Like watch movies, get on set, make and write your own movies. Those are like three very simple things that you can do to like improve your language and understanding of like filmmaking. But it's also very hard like balancing a lot of that stuff, like networking and like being creative. So yeah, like be I guess be easy on yourself too. Like go live your life at the same time, like have life experiences because those are important, especially when you're filmmaking. Like have something to say, I think is super important as a filmmaker and will ultimately become the thing that defines your uniqueness is like staying true to like you and what you want and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your experience and
Thank
answering
you. Yeah,
so
this was
many
awesome.
questions. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the like button. Leave a comment sharing your favorite part of the conversation and subscribe to our channel for more captivating discussions with the visionaries shaping the world of entertainment. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember every great story starts with a spark of imagination. Keep dreaming, keep creating, and we'll see you on the next episode of Lights, Camera, Threads.